everyone, this is Mike and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be looking at how to use the Active Directory module within PowerShell. This will be part one of probably a couple videos that I'm going to put out. And this one's going to go over querying your common objects you're going to find in Active Directory. So looking at users, looking at computers, and looking at groups. Now the output for them is sometimes not in the form that we like. So we could kind of dress that output up a bit by using calculated properties. So this is something that you may have used in other things, but comes in handy for these kinds of components. All right, so with that, let's head over to my lab environment. And in here, I've got just kind of a simple domain controller happening with a very simple Active Directory. Right, where I've got a domain that I named chassitac.com off of my channel, obviously. And I've got a few OUs built into here. I've got the default users container, the computers container. I've got a sales OU. I've got a child OU underneath that intern. I've got a test OU. I've got some groups OU over here. All right, so some basic structure to play around with. All right. So the first thing, if we're going to want to use Active Directory and PowerShell together, you're obviously going to need the Active Directory module. And so this can be had from a few different spots. If you're on a domain controller, you can just install the RSAT tools onto here, and that would give you the Active Directory module. The RSAT tools are also available for separate download if you want to install them on like a Windows 10 client. And the RSAT tools are actually automatically built into the Windows 11 client if you kind of go look at like the optional features that you want to add. So either way, you get the base code in there from within PowerShell. If you type get module list available, that would let you know what you have to play with in here. And specifically, I'm looking for within the Windows directory for modules here, looking for Active Directory. Right, so that is here, and it will be by default on a domain controller. Okay, that's one of the feature components that does get installed. Right, so you just have to do a little more work if you want to install that PowerShell module on your client or on a member server or something like that. All right. So now, first thing we're probably going to want to query users. Right? So the commandlets that you have to play with users, if you use kind of like PowerShell's help system, and this is not typing here, let's see, capture the keyboard, there we go. All right, so let's use the help command and maybe look at commandlets that have user in their name, right? So I could see from the results that come back, there's a few from the Active Directory module right here. And you can see get AD user, new AD user, remove, and set AD user. So the one that we're going to work with, obviously here, if we're talking querying, is going to be get AD user. And you could open up the help individually on that commandlet, right, like so. And you could see what it could take for, let's say, the basic amount of information, the basic parameters here. So I can see that it takes a filter. I can look at the identity here, um, and LDAP filter, and so on. So those are kind of like the main different ways you can interact with this. So for instance, if I wanted to see like one particular user, I could run get AD user, identity, and then whatever like the username would be for the user you're looking for. So in this case, I think I made an account after myself. Yes, I did. All right. So I can get information from that one particular account. Now, notice it will also take a filter, right? So the filter takes a string. And if you want to see some syntax for that, you can go look at the help for get AD user and then specifically the online version of the help. So that should crack open in the browser here. And yep, got it. And if I scroll down, and again, the online help is the only one that really has this. If you go look to the filter, uh, the the details about the filter, this is probably the most level of information, the most amount of information you're going to get for that individual parameter, right? So it lists a whole bunch of syntax components that could go along with that filter. So the only spot, usually I'm a big proponent of help, opening it locally using show window version of help. But the online one is the only one that has all of this detail about using filter, right? So that can definitely come in handy. So if I'm looking at the user here, so get 80 user, let's just do the easiest filter in the world, filter star, right, or asterisk. I go ahead and I run that, and I get everybody coming back who is in my AD environment here. Now, my little sample AD environment's not that big, um, so in fact, if I kind of scroll back down to the bottom here and let me pipe this over to measure object, I've got a whopping 11 users in my sample environment here. It's not that much, right? Right. So what if I wanted to cut down a bit on the results coming back? Well, that's where potentially the filter could come into play, right? So let's say if I just do filter star and maybe select name, I could see everybody. And let's maybe use the filter here, where we'll filter off of like maybe I'll filter off of like the department attribute. So department equals sales, right? Something like that. And notice I only get one result coming back because that's the only user I have with the LDAP property here. So if I actually go look in here, go find that user. There he is. Go look at the organization, and you see the department is sales. So that's what it's after, right? So you could use just a simple, PowerShell comparison operator to, do something like that, right? So that could yield the results there. Now, what if though I didn't want to see like everybody, right, with filter star. I don't know what potential attribute I want to filter on. So what if I just want to see everybody in an OU, something like that. So I can come back in here, still utilize filter star, but utilize a search-based parameter as well, where you could put in the distinguished name of the OU that you want to search. So if I want to look at OU equals sales, DC equals chassis tech, DC equals com. Okay, so I give it a search base. And notice I get a few results coming back, right? So I see there's my Jeff user, there's intern one, there's intern two. So I get three results coming back, and that matches what sales looks like, right? So I look at the sales OU, there's one user in there. I look at the intern's child OU, and there's two users in there. So can I tell it to just give me the OU I'm asking for and not any children underneath it? So you could utilizing a search scope parameter. So search scope base, probably not what you're going to want here. One level, right? So you could do one level, and notice that brings back just Jeff. So it's just searching just searching the path you told it to search. It's not going any deeper than that. And then search scope, instead of one level, we do subtree, and then that will search all the children as well. So there's Jeff in the main OU, and then my interns in the child OU. All right. So it's search base combined with search scope you have a little more detailed way of querying, let's say, exactly what you're looking for, right? So that could be a way to get the information that we want, right? In the form of the objects. Now, what is kind of interesting though is, like if we look at the results coming back, like this one here, department sales, only brought like one user object back because that's the only one I have the sales department filled in on, right? But you look at it and you only see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You only see 10 properties coming back. Now, on a user, there's going to be a lot more than that. Okay, so what's going on here? Is this just default output and there's more stuff to be had? Well, yes, but again, we need to figure out the way to do it, right? So, like for instance, if I did something like get service, name bits, right? So this only brings back three properties, but we know there's more there. The pipeline object has more, right? And if I went to get member, I could see what those more properties were, if you will. Right, so it brought back, name, status, and display name, right? So those are all properties here. There's display name, there's status, and name is actually just the alias for service name, right? Which is down here. So the default output on the screen just shows three properties, but the actual object in the pipeline has a lot more. Okay, so get member fleshes that out. Now, let's go back to our user of Active Directory here. We see the 10 properties, but are there more? Right? So the first way to tell would be maybe to pipe it to get member. And we could see, oh, wait a minute, there's actually not. Right? So for each object, the commandlet only brings back 10 properties. So it's made to give kind of a nod to performance rather than detail. Okay? So, why bring back every property if we're not going to use it? Okay, is kind of the thought of the commandlet. So in the commandlet, you could further use a properties parameter to specify what extra stuff you want to bring back. So again, without it, here's the 10 that come back. But let's say I tell it, let's do properties, and let's bring back the department property. And notice that's now added onto the result that's coming back. Okay, so I could see, here was the original 10 coming back, and then here's this extra one that we saw that we wanted to see. Right, so, I can bring back more than one through that. Maybe we'll do a PWD last set. That's when your password was last set. And notice, there that one is right there. All right. So it does allow me to bring extra properties in the output that would normally not show by default. Now, you might be thinking, well, what if I want to see all of them? So that's actually not that complex to do. You just do properties and throw a wildcard in there, and that brings back everything. So every property that could be queried from the user. Right, so starting at account expiration date and scrolling all the way down, to when created. And what I like about the output for the Active Directory commandlets is the properties come back in alphabetical order. So that's kind of a pet peeve of mine because other things do not do that. So sometimes you're looking to hunt around to find the property you're looking for when it's buried in a list of a whole bunch. So these at least come back in alphabetical order, which I kind of like. Right? Okay, so that's how we could see all of the properties. Right? Now, some of the properties, though, are not in a state that we might want to use them with. So, for instance, like if you look at the PWD last set one that I examined a moment ago, or that I brought back a moment ago, That is in a weirdo number that, should look like a date, but it really is not. Right? So if you examine it, if I take this output here and pipe it to get member, we could see like PWD last set, you could see it's coming back as like an integer, right? So that's not, I thought that should be like a date time thing, right? Because normally, if you look at the output, a lot of things are, like you could see here, password last set. So that one, kind of looks like a normal date time, right? Um, and so that sometimes presents a bit of an issue here, like when you have to work with one of these that's in one of these weird formats. Right? So things like if I come up here, you can see like last log on timestamp, last log on date. So that's also in this kind of weirdo integer. And what that basically is, if you look at the details of that, it's formatted as what's called a file time object, which is a count of like 100 nanosecond intervals since the year like 1601 or 1604 or something like that. All right, so it actually is a .NET thing. If you kind of look up in .NET file time a file time object, you'll find information about it. Right. So um, let's say though, I want um, we could see things like um, the password last set, for instance. Um, and again, let's say, we wanted to, maybe do some work with that. So first of all, how might be the way that we could convert that into something else, right? So I know you're probably thinking there's PWD last set and there's password last set. Are they actually the same? So with this number here, this is a file time object. And I need to convert it into, let's say, something that's a little easier to work with, which would be a date time object, right? So if I do something like get date and pipe that to get member, I could see that this is a date time object, right? So can I convert one to the other? And potentially, right? So usually anything can be converted to anything else, provided we have the means to be able to do it, right? So let's take that number there that we had with the user, PWD last set. Right? So this number right here. And let's say we want to convert that to a just a regular date time object. So that is something we could do utilizing a method from the date time object called from file time. So I can kind of load the date time class, call a method. So again, this is just using some .NET stuff here. From file time, and then there's what we want to convert, right? And then that converts it into the date time. So if we kind of pipe this over to get member, we can see that we have turned this into a date time. So, and it shows Sunday, November 20th, 2022. All right. So Sunday, November 20th, 2022. Okay, so it looks like it's, the same. 10:00:04, was that it as well? Yep. So it looks like that's the same value. Right, so you're not always guaranteed that. Sometimes Active Directory plays some tricks on you, where you might have a value that's local on the domain controller, that's stored in the raw format like file time, and then you have a different, what looks like the same, but it might be different, that's then replicated to the rest of the domain controllers. That's the scenario here with the last logon trifecta over here, right? So this one is locally specific to a particular domain controller. Uh, this one is the replicated value. So the one here, the last logon timestamp, that changes by default every 14 days. So when a value is put in there, it's held in place for 14 days. And then after the 14 days are up, if a new logon occurs, the new date would be put in there. Right? And that's the value that replicates everywhere else. Now you might be thinking, oh, why the heck do they do something like that? It's to stop Active Directory from replicating every time someone logs on. Right? So the last logon is specific to an individual domain controller. So if someone, logged in and 5 different domain controllers processed the login over the course of 5 days, this would differ, on each of those domain controllers. So with this one, this would be once obviously replication has been achieved, once everything has been converged, that would be the same. And last logon date is just this value converted to date time. Right? All right, so let's say though, you wanted to get the most current logon for, let's say, all of the users in Active Directory. Let's say if I wanted to do something like that. Okay, so let's say we have our list of users here. So let's do get 80 user, filter star. All right. So that's going to be everybody. And how about we bring this over to select object and let's grab maybe name and last logon. All right. Oh, now why didn't that show? Well, last logon is normally not one of the properties brought back, right? So I would need to tell get 80 user that, hey, we want that property. So let's do properties, last logon. Right? And now there we go. Okay, now some of these users I've never logged in with. Guest, the Kerbro Ticket Granny Ticket account, user 2, intern 1, intern 2. I don't think I've ever logged in with those ever. So I've just never used them in the different demos for the videos that I've put together. Right. So, but let's say though I want the output to not be in file time. I would like it to be in date time format. So this is where um, a calculated property might be nice here. So that way I could change what was happening in there. Okay, so let's say I have a name and I would like to do last logon, but I'd like to do it in a different format. I'd like to change it from file time over to a date time object. All right? So how forever can I do that? So let's say we want to um, use a calculated property to do it. So let's do start off with an at, and then we have a hash table, which is going to represent the calculated property. Then inside of it, we're going to give it a name. So we'll just do n equal, and then in quotes, what do we want to call our property? Maybe last logon dt for date time. Right? So we'll close the string on that, and then a semicolon, and then we're going to do expression equals or e equals, and then that's going to take a script block as its output type. Okay? So for the script block, we're going to grab the current object. We're going to need to work with the object that's in the pipeline and specifically its last logon. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to want to let's see here. So we're going to want to do a date time, double colon, to, um, not to file time, from file time. And then what value do we want to change over? So we want the object in the pipeline. So that would be the AD user itself. And we want the last logon date. Right? So let's see if this all matches. And there we go. So we've converted that over. Right? So let me take this though, because I apologize. The carriage return's probably messing some people up or the line break. Let me just kind of put that, um, let me just take that and just so it's kind of easier for y'all to read it. Um, so let's carriage return to that. And then there's your calculated property, fully done out, right? So again, what we're calling it, and then the expression where you have the script block, and then what's happening inside of the script block. Right? So we're using the date time class. We're grabbing the from file time method on it, and we're using the value from the object in the pipeline, the last logon property there. Right? So so that allows me to work with that. Okay. So now let's say, so that was last logon. So let's say though, if I want to go back and I want to mess with, how about the password last set, right? So we'll just use pwd last set right there. All right. So I know I could use this one, but either way, this one might be more fun to play with. Okay, it'll demonstrate an example. All right. So let's say I wanted to find users whose passwords have changed in like I don't know the last 7 days. Let's say. All right. So what I could do is first of all figure out the last 7 days, right? So that's from today going back 7 days. So how do I, get that? So if we look at just the commandlet get date, that spits out the current date and time, which is again exactly when I am recording this, right? So you could take the output from that and um, use the to file time um, method on it to get the date in the file time format. So again, with get date, pipe it to get member, and you could see, like right here, um, here's to file time, right? So you can also utilize add days, add hours, add minutes, add months. So you have the ability to alter it that way as well, which again is another thing that we'll do. So like for instance here, let's say if I want to take whatever the date is right now, so we'll do the get date, putting it in parentheses so I can work with the output of it outside of the parentheses. So that's where we'll do the to file time. Right, so that gives me the date in file time format right now. And I want the date 7 days ago, right? So let's say that's going to be $then. And we'll do same thing. We'll start off with get date. And this time we're going to do the add days method where we're going to push it back 7 days in the past. And we're also going to convert this to file time. Right? So if we look at $then, we have a file time. And if we look at $now, we also have a file time. Right? All right, so what do we want to do with this next? So now I want the users who haven't who have changed their password in the past week. All right. So let's do a get 80 user, and this is going to be a filter. So inside of the filter, what we're going to do is we're going to look at that password last set, and get a comparison from that. Right. So if we take pwd last set, which was again the name of the property in Active Directory, if we can go back in here, pwd last set, right? That's the one we're working on. And so pwd last set, if someone's changed their password in the past week, it has to be greater than the date a week ago, right? And so we use an and we'll say pwd last set has to be less than now, if you kind of stack them up, right? And so let's bring that over. Let's maybe just select the name property just to keep the output simple. And those are the users who have changed their password in the week, right? Now, these two I just made fairly recently, so they haven't even logged in. So it's reflecting when their accounts were made. But these were the accounts that have had their password changed in the last week. Right? So, use that for whatever you like, but that's how we could find that out. So the point here is the filter, you can get pretty detailed with it. Right? So if you wanted to do some queries with it, that's potentially one way to do it, right? So, you're only as good as, let's say, you're filtering there. All right. So let's move on to talk about computers. So if we look at the help on star computer star, we could see within the Active Directory command, within the Active Directory module, there's some computer stuff happening here as well. All right. So specifically, get AD computer. All right. So if I want to run this, it behaves kind of similar. So if I do get AD computer, um, and I could give it an identity like, hey, tell me about DC1. And notice if I pipe this to get member, it is still just returning like the 10 objects. All right. So let's say, I want more. Can I do a property partition, property star? That will work, right? So that will bring back the property information from the computer account, right? And it's more than just the 10. So it's bringing back everything it has that we might want to have a look at. So we'll play with the last logon in a moment here, but also notice like in here, things like IPv4 address, IPv6 address, um, the let's see, um, that might also be nice here. Um, here's a good one. Operating system, right? So that can give you the OS. You could see the OS version. So that could be nice. You could see when the account was created, right? That could let you know when it was added to the environment here. Um, so yeah, so there could be some interesting info in here, right? So you could bring that back again, just like with the other information. So if I wanted, let's say, all of the computers, so let's maybe do filter star and property IPv4 address. Um, yeah, let's run that. And then we could see for all of the computers, and I've got like, 4 of them in this environment, it brought back the regular 10 things and that IPv4 address property. Right? So if you want to see some of that extra information, that's there to be able to use. Right? So now What might also be fun with filter is you could still kind of put together a filter for whatever query you want to do. So like for instance here, let's say I wanted to do, how about operating system like, and then in a string do wildcard 2022 wildcard. And so that would bring back all of the computer objects whose operating system property, right? Which, again, when you're looking at operating system, you could see what's there, right? So it brought back all of the ones that had 2022 in their name. So that's why I use the wildcards here, right? So wildcard 2022 wildcard. Okay, so there's my 2022 servers. If I wanted to do just 10, that would bring back my Windows 10 computers. And if I wanted to do 11, there's my Windows 11 computer that I currently have. Okay, now you could also combine this with, with search base if you wanted to, like lessen the results back. So if I wanted all of the Windows 11 computers that were in the search base of maybe cn equals computers, so the computers container, ou equals, not ou, dc equals, dc equals chassis tech, comma, dc equals com, right? So something like that. And again, it's going to be the same result for this, but the point is I'm, using a filter here and then using the search base to again bring results back from one specific area of the Active Directory domain. So again, you could combine search scope as well if you just wanted, that rather than any child OUs or containers that lived underneath it and so on. All right. So allows me to again be specific in what I'm looking for. All right. So another thing, if we wanted to again take advantage of some of the properties that were there, let's say, for instance, I'm looking for a particular age. So maybe I want like 30 days in the past, right? So let's maybe do a get date, add days, and let's do a minus 30. And then let's throw this to file time, right? So that was the date 30 days ago. And let's say I wanted to do my get 80 computer, and let's do a filter where maybe we'll say the last logon is less than that age. And then this would give me the computers, again, out of my four. The only two I've used in the last 30 days have been client 1 and DC 1. So client 2 and client 3, um, they haven't logged in. I don't know when, but it hasn't been in the last 30 days. So if I want just a scan of Active Directory finding computers that haven't logged in the last 30 days or more, okay, so again, it's less than what the date was 30 days ago, that's how you could do it. All right. All right, so last thing, groups. So groups, pretty, not really too complex with groups here. So if we do a help for the name, let's see, asterisk group, close asterisk. All right, we can see that there is a get 80 group and a get 80 group member, right, as the two things there, right, the two main things we want to query. So if I type in get 80 group, obviously I could grab all of my groups by doing the filter star. So in fact, let me just cancel that and just do that straight off here. Get 80 group, filter star. So we could see all of the groups. And maybe I want to just look at, instead of filter, maybe we'll look at identity and we'll do Um, how about my global IT group, which is actually, that's the name of it, GL space IT. Right? So I can see I have one particular group there. Again, same info as in it's bringing back a limited amount of properties. So if I do property partition, property star, that could bring back the rest of the properties for it. Right? So for instance here, so we could see with that it brought back the members, all right, the member of. So this is showing me that this group is a member of another group, and the actual individual members that are in there. All right, so again, if I kind of go look at this group in the graphical tools, you could see there's, one user is a member, and then the member of. So those things are actually populated. All right. If we look at sales, there's two users in there, right? So maybe I want to pick on that one. So let's do a GL sales. All right, and then if we look at the member, we could see kind of, we just have, those things in there. So if I wanted to maybe, grab those out, I could maybe a couple ways I could do this. I could isolate this in parentheses, and then outside the parentheses, you're now working with the object produced by what was in the parentheses, and then say I want to look at the member property, and then that could grab those things out. And what is that looking like? It's looking like strings, right? So these come out as just simple strings. Maybe that's what you want for the members, but maybe you don't. Okay, so that's why they give you a commandlet. So if I take something like this, right, and pipe it to get AD group member, that would spit out the members as an AD principal object, where you could see that there are properties there, if you wanted to work with that. Because if I look at this output up here, this is kind of a pain, right? What if you just want the names of the users? Okay, well, I could, dust off my regex queries to maybe clean that up, but instead, to make life easy for myself, I could take the output of that, pipe it to get AD group member, and then maybe pipe that over to, select object, property, name. Grab the name property. There you go. So a lot easier, right? So typically that's, get AD group combined with get AD group member, does that good job of enumerating the groups in an object format that then has some properties that you could work with. All right. So that's just a little tour there of working with groups. Get AD group and get AD group member. All right. So that's where I'm going to leave this video for now. And I will be posting another one at some point on how to modify objects using the commandlets in Active Directory. Okay, so stay tuned for that one. That'll be coming up in the future. So once again, thanks everybody for watching. If you haven't already, I would greatly appreciate a like and a subscribe just to help the growth of the channel. Costs you nothing and helps the growth of my channel a lot. So if you could, it'd be most appreciated. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.